Welcome to Born to Win. I'm Brian Proctor, and each Monday I share a short message designed to help you start your week with focus, clarity, and intention. These episodes are built around timeless principles that I learned from my father, Bob Proctor. And when understood and applied, these principles can change the direction of your life. If this podcast has been meaningful to you, please rate it, follow it, and share it with someone who could benefit from these ideas. It helps this message reach people who are ready to hear that success isn't something you chase, it's something you allow. You were born to win, and when you live life in harmony with the laws of life, you begin to experience that truth in every area. Today's episode is titled The Law of Gender. There is always a gestation period. So take a deep breath, open your mind, and let's get started. This episode continues our series on the laws of life, universal principles that govern results. And here's the key. They are always operating, whether you're aware of them or not. We've talked about the law of rhythm. We've talked about cause and effect. And today we're going to explore a law that explains something many people struggle with, why results don't show up immediately, even when you're doing the right things. Now, you'll often find that when the spiritual laws are discussed or written about, the law of gender is mentioned last. I have intentionally placed it here earlier in this series because I believe it is critical to understand from the beginning why it is so important to not give up too soon. Another thing to consider is this. Even though this law uses the word gender, it's not referring to male or female as we typically think of it. What it's really describing are two complementary forms of energy. You can think of it like the yin and the yang principle. Two complementary forces really working together. One masculine is the driving force, the initiating, action-oriented side. The other, feminine, is the nurturing force, the receptive, developing side. Yin and yang are not in conflict. They work in harmony. One sets things in motion, and the other allows those ideas to develop and come into form. Both are always present. Both are necessary. And when you begin to understand how these two energies work together, you start to see how ideas move from thought into reality. The law of gender specifically states that everything has a gestation period. Everything moves from idea to form over time. There is always a space between the cause and the visible effect. And that space, where it may feel like nothing is happening, is not empty. It's active. It's where creation is taking place. And creation requires both masculine and feminine energies, plus time. The part of this law I want to focus on here is this. Everything, including your desires, has a gestation period. Every idea, every goal you are trying to bring into form requires time to grow before it shows up in the physical world. The universe does not operate on instant delivery. And yet, that's often how we approach it, especially in today's instant gratification society. We plant the seed of a dream, take a step or two, and expect immediate results. When they don't appear right away, we start questioning the process, or worse, we abandon it altogether. But anything of real value requires time, energy, and nurturing. This is where the law of gender works hand in hand with the law I discussed in episode 25, the law of rhythm. There is a natural cycle to creation, a period of planting, followed by a period of development, and eventually a period of expression. Think about it this way. When a child is conceived, no one expects it to be born the following week. You understand there is a necessary development period. You respect the 40-week cycle because you know it is required for that life to grow strong enough to exist outside the womb. Your goals are no different from the process of the gestation period from conception to birth. Every result you see in the world began as a seed, an idea held in the mind, and that idea had to be nurtured. It required both the driving energy to act and the receptive energy to allow it to develop over time. That is the balance. And that is where patience comes in. Not passive waiting, but steady, consistent action combined with trust in the process. Because when you understand this law, you stop forcing results, and you start cooperating with the natural process of creation. And that is when things begin to unfold as they should. You've likely experienced this. Perhaps you've decided to change something. You set a goal. You start thinking differently. You begin taking action, And for a period of time, nothing seems to happen. No visible results, no external confirmation or even validation from others. And that's when doubt shows up. You start questioning, is this really working? Should I change direction? And worse, am I doing something wrong? We always seem to jump to the idea that we are doing something wrong. What you're actually experiencing is the law of gender, the gestation period. Most people expect results to be immediate. They've been conditioned to believe if it's right, it should happen quickly. But that's not how creation works. Nothing meaningful appears instantly. Everything requires nourishment and a development period. Everything requires time. You may have heard my father say that all seeds, whether physical, like a plant, or spiritual, like a goal or idea, have a set natural incubation period before manifesting. Well, every idea requires time to move from formless energy into physical reality, requiring patience and consistent nurturing of the thought. This is why the goal card tool is so important. It controls your focus and nurtures your seed, and in this case, your goal. It triggers your imagination, and your mind begins to look for opportunities that align with your goal. The incubation period also applies to replacing a limiting paradigm with a productive paradigm. When you introduce a new idea into your mind, it doesn't instantly change your results. It must be accepted, repeated, felt, reinforced, and over time, it begins to influence your behavior, which eventually influences your results. Go back to the equation. Write this down. Burn it into your memory. We talk about it often because it sits at the root of how you create results through your actions. Your thoughts plus your feelings equal your actions. Your actions equal your results. Now add the law of gender. There is always a time between thought and a result. That delay is not failure. It is growth. It is development. It is the unseen work taking place beneath the surface. Your understanding of this law will help you stop doubting the process in the middle. And when you do that, you stay with it. You maintain momentum. My father taught that when you set a goal, especially a meaningful one, you are stepping into something you are not yet fully programmed for. And because of that, there will be a period of time where the goal feels real in your mind, but not yet visible in your life. Well, that's the gap. And that gap is governed by the law of gender. When you make a decision to move toward a goal, something happens immediately. Not outside, but inside. You begin thinking differently. You feel something shift. You start to see possibilities you didn't even notice before. But your results, well, they often don't match the picture in your mind for a while. And that's where it's easy to lose faith. You may have thoughts like, if this were working, I'd see something by now. But that assumption ignores the law. You must be willing to hold the image of what you want without needing immediate evidence. Remember this. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. That's the discipline. To believe in what you do not yet see in your physical world. Because the moment you set a goal, you have created the cause. But the effect takes time. And if you stay with the cause, if you continue to think, feel, and act in alignment with that image, the result must come. That's law. It doesn't respond to opinion. It responds to cause. Let me give you a way to see this clearly. Imagine a solid block of ice in a room. The temperature is below freezing. You begin raising the temperature, 1 degree at a time. At 25 degrees Fahrenheit, nothing changes. 28 degrees Fahrenheit, nothing changes. 30 degrees Fahrenheit, still nothing. Then, at 32 degrees, the ice begins to melt, just a little. Now here's the important part. Was nothing happening before 32 degrees? No, every degree mattered. Every increase was part of the process. But the visible result didn't show up until a threshold was reached. Your goals work the same way. You are building change internally, long before it becomes visible externally. The paradigm shift takes time. When you set a goal, you're not just working toward an outcome. You are reprogramming your paradigm. You are changing how you show up each day. You're building a new identity, and that takes time. It requires repetition, emotional involvement, and consistency. This is where tenacity is your friend. You must become the person who can achieve the goal before the goal shows up. And where you'll be most tested with this is the invisible phase, because you can't see it. But internally, your thinking is changing. Your reactions are shifting. Your identity, it's evolving. And those changes are what produce lasting results later. Think of charging a battery. You plug it in, and at first, nothing looks different. But energy is being stored, capacity is increasing, and eventually it reaches a point where it can deliver power. If you unplug it too soon, you never reach that point. That's what happens if you quit too early. The hardest part of this law is not understanding it. It's staying steady during it. It's an emotional challenge. Because during the gestation period, you don't have evidence yet. It's easy to lose belief. So remember this. A professional performs at their best regardless. Amateurs need to see results to stay committed. Professionals stay committed until the results show up. Why? Because they understand the process. They trust the balance between the driving force, the initiating, action-oriented side, and the nurturing force, the receptive, developing side. They act. They allow. They stay with it. And they know this: if the cause is right, the result must come. This is following the law of gender. Have you ever tried to learn a new language? At first, progress feels slow. Everything feels awkward. You struggle, you make mistakes, but over time you start recognizing patterns. You begin understanding, and eventually words make sense. You recognize a flow, and before long, you become fluent. That didn't happen overnight. There was a period of creation. A period of doing the work and allowing the process. Every time you give up, you reset the process. And that's when you feel stuck. Not because you're incapable, but because you've given up on the idea of achieving your goal. Think of this law as a stabilizer. It stabilizes your results, because anything that appears too quickly rarely lasts. But when something is properly nurtured through its gestation period, it builds. It builds. It builds strength, depth, and sustainability. That time is not wasted. It is required. And when you begin to honor that process, something shifts internally. You develop a quiet knowing that what you desire is on its way. You're no longer frantic. You're no longer forcing. You move through your days with a calm, confident certainty, because you understand the process and you trust it. So here's your practice for this week. I suggest you write these steps out and commit to them. First, choose one goal you are truly committed to. It could be improving your health, strengthening a relationship, or creating greater success in your professional life. Next, acknowledge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Do not resist it. Do not judge it. Just see it clearly. When doubt shows up, and it will, remind yourself, this is part of the process. Stay consistent with your actions and allow them to develop. Build calm into your day. Create simple practices you can lean on. Breathing exercises, time in nature, music. Find what settles you and return to it often. At the end of each week, review your progress. Acknowledge what you've done. Congratulate yourself for showing up, because small progress, repeated consistently, compounds into lasting results. You may have heard my father say, you don't get what you want, you get what you are. And becoming something, well, it takes time. It requires patience and belief, not only in the process, but also in bringing your big, beautiful desire into the physical world. It requires consistency, repetition, repetition, repetition. Do the work to understand and live this law, and your life will begin to move in a way that feels natural, steady, and aligned, into a rhythm that makes sense and no longer feels rushed. Thank you for joining me today on Born to Win. If this message resonated with you, please share it with someone who could use a reminder of their own inner greatness. It also helps me to reach more people if you rate and follow this podcast. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Brian Proctor Official. And remember, success isn't about luck or timing. It's about alignment. You were designed for success, built for expansion, and born to win. I'll see you next Monday Until then, think big, trust yourself, and keep growing.